Luke, what we read in our Bible speaks. But I'm going to be highlighting verses 18 through 24. But before we read our text, I want to give you a brief introduction for those who are not familiar with the parable of the prodigal son. The text was written by Luke, who was a physician. So his writings usually are full of words that doctors would use. Written around AD 60 to 61, Luke used eyewitness testimonies to write these things. When we get to chapter 15, Luke tells about how Jesus gave this parable. And in verse 1 it says that a certain man, this is really about the Father, which is God, and his compassion for his children. The Father's reaction to his son's brokenness. The son, which was a young son, asked for his portion of what he would get if the father had died. This is unheard of in that time, or even today. It would be like my father having a fortune and I can't get any of it until he dies. I go and I tell him to hurry up and die so I can get what you're going to leave. This is what rich people deal with on a regular basis. We see it today when a father or a parent is hospitalized and the people who stand to gain something from their passing quick to pull the plug. Infer that the money will be eaten up or depleted by the hospital. See, this is what the young son did. So the dad, loving the son, did so and divided the wealth and gave the young man his portion. The young man turned that portion, crops, cattle, jewelry, whatever, into money. He liquidated and left the town immediately and went far away. Whenever we go into the world chasing the things of the world, most of the time the world will chew us up and spit us out. He wasted the money most likely on drinking and harlots and prostitution and blowing the money like anybody would do who was a sheltered kid. That's what you would do as well. Living this recklessness can only last for so long. Amen. Before the sin that we have sown comes back to bite. A famine hit. The famine hit the town, but he ran out of resources. This situation was out of the son's control, and there was nothing that he could do about it. He got a job as a day laborer feeding swine or pigs. A day laborer usually worked for money for that day and or just enough to get food. They were considered worse than a slave. A slave had a place to stay, food, clothing, bathe, had some kind of medical treatment if needed. His job, feeding the pigs, was an insulting job for a Jewish person. Amen. For one reason, they didn't even eat pigs because they were considered unclean according to the law of Moses. The son found himself desiring the slop that the pigs were eating. This shows that he had hit rock bottom. This was a sweet bean slop that the poor people would eat. He came back to himself, which is another way of saying he came to his senses. He woke up. He knew that if the father was rich enough to have slaves because he had lived there and knew that the slaves ate better and lived better than he was living then. With that somewhat brief introduction, we can now stand and read our text, starting in verse 18. Luke, chapter 15, I'm going to start in verse 18. He says, I will arise and go to my father, and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and I am no more worthy to be called son. But the father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe, and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand, and shoes on his feet. And bring hither the fatted calf, and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and is found. And they began to be merry. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. We get to verse 18. We see the son came to his senses. After all that has gone on in the life of the son, it was a famine or a situation that brought him to get himself under control. This shows me that God will allow us to have some hard times that we may understand that we need him more than we need the world and our friends. For example, as a father, as a son, I have had some hard times that I'm sure my dad wanted to help me with. Some situations that he wanted me to keep from having to go through. But God brought those situations to me. Amen. So, Father God, and no one is a better teacher than he is. Yes, yes. As a father, there are some things or some times that I pray that my son doesn't have to go through what I do understand, but I don't want him to go through. But I want to always be able to be there for him. And it's this hardship that makes him rely on God and not daddy. God had to bring every person that got into God's family came broke. And I'm not talking about your money, I'm talking about your spirit. You were broke down, you were beaten, you had met your end. It was like, I tried this, but it's not working. I tried that, but that's not working. It looked good right now, but then it get bad. And it don't get just bad, it get rock bottom bad. I mean, down to where you're digging in the garbage can bad. Come on. But if the garbage can and the homelessness is what drew you to God, he'll allow it. Because it didn't kill you. The son showed what we all did. When we realize we have sinned and are sorrowful and we repent in our hearts. That's the first act of anything that God wants. He doesn't want you to, God bless the poor, bless the weak, sick. Bless those who aren't saved. Because the poor can get money. The sick can get well. Everybody else can get something, but if the sinner, if the person who is not saved doesn't get Christ, he loses. And I'd rather lose a meal or two than lose my soul. A repentant heart. Repentant hearts understanding that they have sinned against God. You see, the son said, he said, I've sinned against heaven and you. So not only do you, when you sin against heaven, you sin against the people around you. Never seen a sin that affects everybody. If I, in some drunken stupor, go out here and drink all night, and jump in my car and run over somebody, I lose my job because of DWI on a driver's license. You lose your job. Not only do I lose my job, I lose my funds, and the funds is coming into my house, so that affects my house. Not only do it affect my house, it affects this church because I can no longer tithe. So it affects, your sin can affect everybody. And then it says in verse 19, unworthy. Every person who comes with a true brokenness understands that they are unworthy to even go into God's presence. Let alone want to be in his family. You can't even. I used to ask Pastor, how do you pray? Because I used to feel this unworthiness. I still do. This unworthiness to want to come to God's throne and pray. I would be too ashamed of the stuff that I did the night before or just before 5 minutes ago that I don't want to come to God like I come to my buddy. Not even like I come to my dad. Me and my dad can have some real serious conversation. But at the same time, I have to reverence God as being not just my dad, but my father. The one who can change my world. Well, that's what you tell your kid when they do something wrong. Do you want me to change your world? God is saying the same exact thing. You want me to change your world so you can know who it is you're dealing with? See, but we come with this not expecting to be forgiven.
Right.
When I came down the aisle to get saved, I wasn't expecting to be saved.
Yeah, man.
But that's the blessing. That's the compassion.
Amen.
Just want to confess to Him that I know what I've done to you was wrong. What I said to you or said about you or didn't say or didn't do. All of that.
Come on.
You got to sit there before Him with your head held low because you know that you owe. God did not have to forgive us and bring us into His rest. Because He could have said, since you treat me like this, I'm going to treat you like that. So His mercy was great on the Father's part. This is being a father. Being a father, showing mercy on your child is a big part, which I learned very quickly. Because over time, I began to see things that my son would do, and I would get angry. Boy, don't stop. But then I had to remember, I was like him. See, and I didn't know until my dad would say, "Oh, don't worry about it, Keith," because your daddy was the same way. And I'd be like, I can't remember past last night, let alone 30-something years ago. But at the same time, we got to have some mercy as fathers. Understanding that they're growing and they're learning and they're trying to do what's right, but they don't know until you show them. And so now you have a vision of what a real father looks like. Mercy, grace. They're already somewhat afraid of you in a respectful way. And if you have unmerciful discipline to them, they'll grow up to resent you. See, you will damage the relationship with your child when you don't show mercy. Mercy is like the glue that holds together the bridge that holds together your relationship when it comes to your kid. And then you have compassion. The son got up out of the slop and went to the father. Doesn't say it took him long. He might have been running to get back home. See, hunger got a way of making you do stuff that you wouldn't normally do. When you look at something, if you're hungry enough, you'll wipe off the dirt.
Just sprinkles.
Yeah, it's earthly sprinkles.
Break that little piece off.
If you wanted that piece of candy bad enough and it dropped on the floor, as a kid, you'd get it up, blow it out. God bless it. God made dirt. Dirt don't hurt. And you'd eat it. I remember that. I mean, this is what you would do. Now imagine if you hadn't ate.
Yeah, come on.
Imagine if you were lower than, you were looking to eat the slops that they give a pig. You were ready to dig out of a garbage can to eat. Yeah, you'll run home. And then he says, he ran, or he got home. But while on the way, his daddy was looking. That means that the father was already looking for him afar off. Because it said while he was yet afar off, he was looking for him. Don't that remind you of God? He said, before the foundation of the earth, I called you. That means God was looking for you from the foundation, from the beginning of time, before time even really got going. He said, I was looking for you. And then he called you by your name. And he said, in the marketplace was like the street that took you home when you came home from school. You remember how it was. If you did anything wrong at school, the village would know about it, and you'd get a whooping from the first street you turned on all the way till you got home. We call it the walkway, the sorrow street or whatever you want to call it when you're going down and they say, I heard what you did and you better stay over there because I'll whoop your behind. You know, every corner you made it down, somebody was either throwing something at you, hitting you with something because you acted a fool. Because everybody in the village knew that you acted up. This was what happened to the son. Everybody heard it. Everybody knew. Ooh, look, there's the dad right there, that father. Look, his son, he liquidated his assets and gave his son his portion. He took off. I heard he was out there living bad, living life. He out there on drugs, messing with all these different women and doing all this and that. Everybody had something to say about his situation, but nobody was coming. I ain't heard nobody come to the Father and say, "Well, we gonna be praying for him." Yeah, like Mama and them used to do. Y'all pray for him. Pray for him. Pray for him. He out there in the world got a hold of him right now, but pray for him. Because just like we were out there in the world and somebody had to pray for us, it's the same thing. It didn't change. The marketplace was like this little strip. And the Father seen him afar off. This was the pre-punishment before the Royal Rumble. You remember how it was? You get punished all the way up through the house, but when you got home, it was the real punishment. It got real. The Father most likely was watching for the Son. After he left. After he left. That means the daddy's heart, the father's heart left when the son left. When the son grabbed, it wasn't that the son liquidated the assets. It wasn't because he was rich. He didn't worry about the money part. It was just the son felt like, he said, I wish you was dead and I could have mine. And then once he gave him yours, you ain't got to wish I was dead. Here you go. And then he gave him that and then he took off. From that moment on, worry began to set up in the heart of the father. It would be like my dad giving me the gospel and I say, okay, and I go out there and I leave it. From that point on, worry was set up in his heart to send prayers out. But the father knew when I send prayers out, I know it coming back. See, this is the effectual, fervent prayer of the righteous. And then you turn around and say, if you train them up the way that they're supposed to, they can go out there in the world, but they'll realize they're coming back. See, the father most likely was watching. This is wisdom of the father who has been out in the world. He knew the struggles were out there. He knew the hard times in the world was unmerciful. I say it all the time, I don't whoop my son, I don't want the police doing it. So I teach him how to be a respectful young man so that when the cops do come, he can hold his hands on the steering wheel. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, I have my ID and my license. Yes, I have my registration. And act like he got some sense. Yeah, you know your rights, but act like you got some sense so you can make it home.
Amen.
See, if they whoop him, they don't show mercy. Nope. They don't show love. I whoop him because I want him to be alive and have some understanding. Come on. That's wisdom on the father's part. The text says that he was a great way off. This phrase is saying that before he even got to the marketplace, the father ran to meet him. First off, Jews don't run. Because they got this long thing on, right? Like a robe. And it's touching the ground. He would literally have to hinge his robe up like a lady and try. No man wants to do that. No man run around trying with holding up no dress. That's first off. Second off, they weren't supposed to show their legs. See what I'm saying? It was embarrassing to show your legs. Sometimes we feel like that now. I got little chicken legs. I don't like people to see my legs. I wear pants all the time. You got them on it. You know, but they wouldn't run in risk of showing their legs. Watch out, man. Could you imagine trying to hold this dress up and run, get tangled all up, fall over? No, they wasn't doing no running, but this father here didn't care about the embarrassment that he would face. So he would run. He'd take the embarrassment. Come on now. You know any fathers like that that's willing to take the embarrassment? For his son. This shows the father and the son's situation was well over the village. This is why my mom had this saying. What goes on in this house stays in this house. See, if you can keep it in the house, your relationship with if I don't tell people the problems that I got in my marriage and in my house, I can make amends to my problems, but the moment it touch outside, it's embarrassing now. Now you got issues. Now everybody's pride is in the way. Don't go running your mouth about what's happening in your home. Because you may be quick to forgive your child, but other people won't. See, the father must be willing to suffer the embarrassment of a disobedient child. Oh, no. Y'all understand? No, the same child that buck up to you and want to fight you, you gotta love him enough to put him out and not beat him to death. Yeah, you gotta love him enough to say, okay, you grown now, get out there. Have it. live the life you said you want to live, but I'll be praying for you all the while. I remember going to daycare to pick up my son, and they said he was throwing food. This was embarrassing as a father to me, because it shows that I didn't teach him not to throw food. We know that. You don't get a whooping for acting up in school because you was just acting up. No, it was an embarrassment to your parents, to your father. They used to say it like this: I'm gonna tell your daddy. You didn't want that. See, you want to keep that healthy fear there. And then he says, the father ran. Didn't care about the embarrassment that he would face, but he wanted to keep the son from facing that embarrassment and that shame that the village was going to press on to him. Because they was waiting on him. I bet you some of the village people seen, there you go, he coming right now. I can't wait to get him and hit him in his head with this shoe. But God ran out to us.
Come on, God.
When we was out there in the world doing our thing, you know, where we were about to face the embarrassment of whatever sin it was that had took over our life, he ran to us and said, I'm going to cover you real quick. And while they mocking you and scorn, I'll take the blame for that. So that when somebody does say something good about you, you can say, it wasn't me, it was the Father.
There you go, baby. There you go.
God the Father comes running to us because he sees us afar off.
Yes, he does.
And he kisses us and hugs us and embraces us, even though we stink and we smell like outside.
Watch out now.
You ever heard that? Everyone say, y'all smell like outside. I ain't never know what outside smelled like until my son came from outside one day. And I understand that's what outside smelled like. I really does. I never knew what that smelled like, but this is what I'm saying. While we were nasty, stinky, filthy with sin, God said, I'm going to run to you. And not only am I going to run to you, I'm going to hug you and I'm going to kiss you. And matter of fact, I'm going to do more than that. The sins make you stink. And he embraces us anyway. And he doesn't care about how we look on the outside because he can fix all that.
Yeah.
Because first he wanted to see if you were broken on the inside. Because one thing I learned about being a father is certain things that you're not going to be able to fix. But then it's those things like God the Father. He can fix anything. So he's not concerned with you stinking, smelling like your sin. He's not concerned with that. He's more concerned with your heart. And then he sees the confession. Whoever said confession is good for the soul must have knew the Bible. Because it's a matter of fact, it is good for the soul. If you confess the